Hey, this is Pierre Delacote talking. Microsoft 365 Copilot is going to be generally available the 1st of November 2023, so next Wednesday, actually, and I thought I will make a video explaining how you could apprehend Copilot. It's not an easy game because it's really transformational, so I should you play with it. And that's my agenda. I'm going to start to talk about, what is Copilot, make a focus on Microsoft 365 Copilot because behind Copilot there's a lot of things, and there's specifically this deck is to present Microsoft 365 Copilot. How does it work? If you want to understand the, the the principles behind the scenes, what are the technical and licensing requirements? That's probably the one of the most important thing to know. And I'll discuss a little bit about the governance, my recommendation in general, what is the learning curve that I foresee, what users need to learn. There's different things you need to learn when you're going to use Copilot. Even if, I don't have access to Microsoft 365 Copilot, I can see that generative AI will bring a lot of disruption. So you need to learn a few things. Why communication is important. What about AI principles? Very quickly, a reminder of Microsoft AI principle, responsive AI. What strategy I will recommend to deploy Copilot and a list of resources. And if you're interested by this deck, just ask me in the comments and I'll share the deck. So let's start with what is Copilot. Copilot is actually a lot of things. It's like, Viva, there's a lot of marketing behind it. And let me just say that it's an evolution. Maybe it's going to be a revolution. Some people are seeing it as a revolution. It's really after the cloud and after working on digital transformation, which is not there yet in every organization. There's a new disruption coming, and this new disruption is AI, which is going to be very transformative. So everybody needs to be prepared for that. So when you look at the extended family, the Copilot family there's a lot of things. It's in Power Platform. It's already available today. Everybody can test it. It helps you to create your flows, your apps. It's already there. There's with Dynamic 365, I think it's called Viva Sales, and maybe there's a Copilot for Dynamic 365 that can help you to connect to your CRM, for example, and do some forecast and have the context of a customer right where you're in the meeting with the customer. You can track what you have said, what your actions should be. And there is Microsoft 365, Copilot for Microsoft 365. That's going to be the focus of this presentation. But there's also a Copilot for security for Windows. I use it every day. Copilot for Windows. It's in for Windows 11. It's in preview. It works well. I made a lot of videos about it. Obviously, there's Bing, which is a little bit the same thing than Copilot for Windows. From what I saw, I didn't see much of a difference. So Bing Chat for Enterprise, for example, and it recently has been rebranded with the Copilot logo. So I guess it's quite the same thing. And there's a GitHub also to help developers to develop, you know, quickly and also to maybe correct bugs or whatever. It's empowering the developers to apparently with a lot of success to develop better applications. And on the side, there's also already OpenAI, and actually Copilot is leveraging OpenAI with Azure OpenAI services and connected services, which were there for a long time, especially connected services. And Azure OpenAI is based on the partnership with OpenAI, and that provides ChatGPT. So and DALI. So it's leveraging some of those. I'm not going to go in really into details of architecture first because I don't know much about it. It's probably worth to have a session. I hope that it's going to be a detailed session. But Let's focus on Microsoft 365 Copilot. So, as I say, it's the Microsoft piece, Microsoft 365 piece we're going to discuss here. So, it's based on large language models, so or the natural, I was going to say the natural way to discuss with Copilot is natural language. So that's a big breakthrough that you can ask things in your own language and in different languages actually, and it will be able to interpret what you're trying to ask or say, and it's not like search where you add keywords and it tries to figure out what you're looking for. Here you can discuss and iterate in your discussion and keeps the context. So it's based on large language models, and also it's based on Microsoft Graph. So it grabs your data in Microsoft 365 to make sense of your questions. If you're asking a question, what were the latest important things that happened last week? It's going to look in your email, in your documents, in your meetings eventually, and crawl that and make a summary, for example, if you're asking for a summary. And obviously, it's based on Microsoft 365 apps, so it's triggered from Microsoft 365 apps, and most of them are in the scope, and more will come into the scope. And also, it can have access to internet data if you want to cross-reference things that came not from your system but came from internet. The concept between behind Microsoft 365 Copilot in terms of security, compliance, and privacy, and responsibility AI, it relies on the same concept that Microsoft you know provided for years. So it's gonna respect the security of your system. So nothing you're gonna ask Copilot will go outside of your tenant. Everything is respecting the permission you put on your document. So, for example, if somebody is is typing a question that can find theoretically a document that you don't have access to, it won't show you this document. It won't base its answer from this document. And it respects all the compliance and the privacy that you see with Microsoft 365. With on top of that, some responsibility AI where Microsoft is committing on different topics. I'm gonna show at the end of this deck. So you can be confident that from an enterprise perspective, your data will be secure, and you won't have any problems except if you're surfacing data in your tenant that are open to everyone in your tenant. Then that might be a problem because Copilot will find those documents, and if you didn't manage the permission correctly, then you have a problem, just like with Microsoft 365 already with the search. So what data does Microsoft 365 Copilot access? So yeah, the chats and channel messages and transcripts and documents in Teams, documents in OneDrive, documents in SharePoint, probably more than that, pages and any kind of document actually, and in Outlook, emails, calendar, contacts. So it's going to analyze all this data and try to figure out based on your prompt what you're trying to achieve. So I think it's important, and that's coming from Microsoft site. I think it's important to know that when you're dealing with generative AI, there's some concept you need to have in mind. First, it can be wrong. The answer can be wrong. So check your facts. Sometimes when you're asking a question, Copilot, it will give you the source where he found the information, so you can check if the source is outdated or it's accurate. So you also another concept you need to review what you're asking, but you need to fine tune. Prompting is not an easy thing if you just think that just ask a question and you will have the answer. You'll see that depending on the question and depending on the number of iteration, the quality of what's going to be brought back is going to be very different. So iterate. And finally, I think Microsoft nailed it with the term of Copilot. It's not Copilot is not a pilot. It's not an autopilot. It's empowering you. So it's a new partnership that previously you had the search and you were searching and you're finding information. You were relying on the search to do your job. Here it's the same thing. You're relying on assistant companion, which is Copilot, but it doesn't do the job for you. You definitely need to do some fact checking and have a collaboration with this companion. And you know it's difficult to list what it can do because generative AI can do a lot of things, but Microsoft segmented it in a way I think it's valid, where you can create, edit, catch up, and ask. But definitely there's more to it. So where does it apply? So it applies today in a lot of different areas. So there's Copilot for Teams, the Copilot for Outlook, Copilot for Word, Copilot for PowerPoint, Copilot for Excel, in Excel, Copilot in OneNote, Copilot in Loop, Copilot in Whiteboard. And there's also a chat that comes into Teams where you can ask questions to crawl everything. It's called Microsoft 365 Chat. So it's really in most of the main important tools you're using every day because it brings you productivity directly from those tools, and it will come to SharePoint. I saw a demonstration a long time ago where you can ask Copilot to create a SharePoint page. It's going to come to Stream, I'm pretty sure, to summarize a video. That's my dream. You don't have to listen to all this video. I hope YouTube will bring that. Just say, hey, summarize this 30 minutes video for me, and I'll see if it works to look at it. So it's coming in a lot of products, and I'm not going to demonstrate all those features. You have Microsoft as a channel, and I put in the deck the link to this channel where you can see some demonstration on how it works in Outlook, in Teams, etc. So Microsoft, you same thing. I took some examples coming from Microsoft. Some I made mine, but here is a grid of examples. But you can imagine that the examples gonna be very vast because we're gonna learn in this journey. We're gonna find more and more examples that are accurate, that are working fine. Some others might work fine in an environment, not working fine in another environment. But here are some examples segmented by create, edit, catch up, and ask. And just to take a few, for example, in Outlook, uh, you can ask Outlook to draft an email with your own style based on how you write usually. So for me, maybe it's gonna make some mistakes because since English is not my native language, maybe it's going to reproduce mistakes. I will see when I have access to to Copilot. That's another problem is having access to Copilot, and we'll discuss that in a minute. You can translate things like translate it in French or German, so you can create content like you do in ChatGPT, and you can list how the output. What is your expectation in terms of output? Is it table? Is the bullet points, is the number of words you want to respect, the style. So there are many ways you can leverage Copilot in here. So it's a list of examples. Some are coming from Microsoft, some are coming from me. But you will invent your own examples, and Microsoft is going to provide a Microsoft, I think, Copilot Lab where they're going to share some prompts are working for everybody. It's going to be a community based from what I understand. So you'll be able to see and have new ideas, see examples that people found and were successful with. And so you will build your own. Here's another example provided by Microsoft where it's a instead of just explaining Copilot features, what you can do in Word, Excel, etc. This is more journey use case, and I think it's also a good way to approach it. It's to figure out with your teams, depending on their work, where Copilot applies the best. And it's not just Copilot from one application, it's Copilot along your journey, along the process, workflow of a use case. And here's an example where you start with Teams and Word, and then go to PowerPoint, and then finally go to Outlook. And it shows you that you can really, ask questions, you can produce information, you can summarize things, you can generate uh, content pretty quickly. And definitely that's why it's your co-pilot. This workflow, you have your workflow in mind. It's not going to do all the workflow for you. It's going to support you when you need it. So, how does Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot works? So just before that, I wanted to take another slide from Microsoft explaining the differences between the different generative AI that Microsoft provides today. So it's not all complete, but if you make if you want to know the difference between Big Chat Enterprise, and Microsoft 365 Copilot, I think that's important. All of them are using GPT, large language model. That's the base. All of them are using web search and 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 also use content generation engine. All of them, I think, are using Dolly today too, so that's new. But only Bing Chat for Enterprise and Copilot are protecting your data. So the data is not, going out, and um the Copilot and Bing Chat for Enterprise are not learning from your data. So it's secure. It's not the same thing with ChatGPT. When you're sharing something, when you're asking a question, or for example, if you ask ChatGPT to proofread a document or an email where there's, sensitive information, you don't have any control on that. With Big Chat Enterprise and Copilot, you won't have the information won't go to Microsoft. Uh, so Microsoft try even bring more security, privacy, because it control who's your your data. It stays in your environment. So the security is respected, privacy and compliance. The Microsoft Graph is leveraged. Obviously, Graph is a way to connect signals. So if you're working with people, there's a signal saying Pierre-Yves is working with Noah. There's a signal saying Pierre is working on those documents, a signal saying Pierre had received those emails from this person, etc. So Graph is interconnecting all those data in Microsoft 365, and then can complement the large language model when you do a request to say, okay, I'm doing a request, and then what? Maybe I need to analyze other things that what is in the request in the prompt that are coming from Graph, and obviously it's connected to Microsoft apps directly. So this is a diagram explaining the flow, the data flow of what's going on, and as you can see, nothing is getting out of your tenant or your Microsoft environment. Your privacy is respected, and it's really, I'm not going to go into detail, but it's really relying on the Microsoft Graph and the large language model with different back and forth transaction, where the first one is to you prompt something, and then it goes to Microsoft Graph to complement your prompt with some data coming from the graph, and then go to the large language model to, if you ask for a summary, then do the summary, and then comes back to the graph, and eventually complement with other data in the graph, and then bring back the information to the users. And there's on top of this, there's a very good video made by Microsoft explaining, how Copilot is working. So I encourage everybody to watch this video. But you can go beyond Microsoft 365. So you have um, the ability to have what they call plugins, where it's gonna also have some limitations, and it will. The goal is to respect your privacy and be responsible, follow the responsible AI principles. But you'll be able, and there were some demonstration where we saw that you were asking a question like, I want to know in Workday this and this, and so in Teams, and he was able to figure out you were asking Workday, so it was installing the plugin for Workday and did the search in Workday, retrieve the data, and then summarize the information coming from Workday. So it's a on the fly thing, but Workday is not going to have access to your data, Microsoft 365 data. It's just Copilot is making the with the plugins, making the connection with all the pieces, and bring the value that the LLM, large language model, can bring, and also the graph. And you also have the graph connectors that you can leverage. That means you can ask, for example, when you if you connect through the graph a system like let's say ServiceNow, where you have a knowledge base, then when you start to ask a question to Copilot, it can look in the graph and look in ServiceNow and bring information coming the knowledge base, because maybe that's where the information is. Not every information are not just in Microsoft 365. So you can extend it. Obviously, Microsoft Graph, if you don't know it, it has a cost, so you need to look into it. But there's an extension to other source of information than just the Microsoft 365 through Microsoft Graph. So, unfortunately, to start this journey with Copilot, there's some requirements, and they're pretty important. The first thing is probably, I think I will say, the most constraintful requirement is the cost. So first you need to have users on E3, E5. It's not available yet in GCC, GCCI, so it's going to be only commercial. I didn't see on in EDU, but I'm not sure. Uh, but you need a minimum of 300 seats, uh, and you need to purchase 300 seats of Copilot, and those seats, in each seat is $30 per user per month. So if you make the county as 300 times 30 per year, it's around 100K. So it's an investment for sure. I'm personally think that you know uh, $30 per user per month is $1 per user per day, and or almost maybe less. And personally, my opinion is that you can save $1 per day by being more productive. It's a TCO versus TVO discussion that has been going on for years, decades. Some company will embrace this because they see the value, they see the potential. Some won't because they're scared of the potential, they're scared of the cost, and also they might not have the environment where having productivity gains isn't that easy to put in place. So the licensing is something to have in mind. So if you want to do an experimentation, you need to purchase at least 300 seats as of now, as of today. Might change in the future because for small business, that's a problem. So they might just deploy through enterprise agreement, Copilot first, and then come later with a solution for small business. On the technical side, You need to have an Active Directory. Now it's called Microsoft Entra. So based accounts, that's for the security reasons. Then users need to use Microsoft 365 apps. So forget about Office 2016. If you have users on Office 2016, no way. And also they need to be on the current channel. So the most updated version of Microsoft 365 apps. So that's a prerequisite that you need to have in mind. Also, uh, uh, Copilot's going to store some when it's going to ask when you're going to ask to generate documents. It's going to store some stuff. It's not clear um, what exactly it's going to store in OneDrive, but you need to have OneDrive active. Sorry about that. And so OneDrive needs to be active for the users going to be using Copilot. Teams Desktop or the web app are going to be enabled to use Copilot. The new teams, the old teams, the classic teams, they both will work. But if you want to have access to, summarize what has been said since, you come late to a Teams meeting and you want a summary of what has been said. If you don't have the transcription, it's just like with intelligent recap. You need to activate that in the meeting or in your tenant for all your meetings. At the beginning, it will only work in the new Outlook. So that's another topic you need to look at. New Outlook will replace the Outlook Classic. I will say in the coming 2 or 3 years. So maybe you should start to look at it. So the new Outlook will be able to host Copilot. And in the roadmap, I saw that the classic Outlook will come in March because obviously the classic Outlook is the most popular right now, and some people don't like the new Outlook. But new Outlook, I think it's gonna replace the old Outlook Classic. If you want to use Loop, you need, if you want Copilot to leverage Loop, generate things in Loop, or ask question in Loop, obviously you need to enable Loop. And there's something saying that Windows 11 is preferred. I'm not sure. I don't have the details why. Maybe some interaction with the computer. I'm not sure why it's that. I don't see that as this as I mean, I didn't read anything about a requirement. It's mostly said it's preferred. So, and here's a link where you can find all the details. So, what are the governance recommendations? So there's a lot of recommendations. What's important in general when you're working with AI, OpenAI, Azure, OpenAI, whatever AI it is, you need to have clean data. The best enemy of AI is a mess. So if you have a lot of repositories, if you have outdated documents, you have duplicate documents, you know, I, when you ask a question, how does he know if the the answer he will provide you should be based on a document that is in your OneDrive or in the same document that is in a team or SharePoint or whatever wherever it is. So it's you need to proceed with a data hygiene strategy where you can clean the outdated, redundant, trivial content. It's called rot. You need to organize content into logical folders and sites so it's easier not only for AI but also for users. Eventually, if you can tag files with keywords, metadata in SharePoint, it's going to be easier for Copilot to help you. So help Copilot to help you. Standardize file names because if you in Copilot, if you type a question and you say, look at with this document, generate this deck. When you're going to type this document, the name of the document, if you have a naming convention, it's going to be easier because it will be easy to find and probably there will be less duplicates. If you figure out that in your environment you have multiple versions of documents, try to help Copilot to find what is the final version of a document. So consolidate the version of a document uh, and try to organize it in fewer repositories so it's not spread in every corner of your organization. Also, the problem is, Copilot is going to be able to find whatever it needs to find, and with the permission of the user who is asking the question. But the problem is, if you didn't have a good strategy in terms of permission management, you didn't educate users. If users are, when they're creating a SharePoint site, a team, it's public by default, and that don't realize they invite people to the team, but they don't realize, and that's something very common. Like a public people don't realize that a public team is, even if you don't access to the team directly, you don't see it, you don't see the channels. In the search, you will have access to every document. So some people think that their team is protected because they invited people, but actually, since it's a public team, it's accessible to everybody. So there's oversharing, potential oversharing in your organization. So when you're gonna do a prompt with Copilot, it will respect your credentials. So if it's a public team, it will bring back this document from this public team. So you need to check if in overshare, and you need to educate and supervise on, document what is your data policy? You need to educate users. If you don't have a data policies or any governance around document management in your organization, you definitely need to start to work on this. To educate people, where to store, when to use what, how to secure information, who should share the information with, guide them, and so have common guidance. Educate them on using those that data hygiene habits. So people, give some sort of standard name for their files. People share with the correct permissions. They don't undershare or overshare, but they share correctly. They clean documents that are not useful. They don't keep them. Uh, So that's a lot of education here. It's not always easy. For example, cleaning is something is not easy because people don't like to clean. That's why there's more and more free storage out there. But at one point, especially for AI, it's gonna be complicated. And so to do that, also, I worked recently with a customer who had a digital librarian. Here, Microsoft call it a data steward. But it will be good to have some people who can, can supervise the how the data is stored, where it's stored, see if it's active, see how many teams are active, see if they're following some governance principles and stuff like that. So to me, the learning curve is pretty difficult to predict because generative AI, Copilot even more, it's pretty new to everyone. So we're building this. This deck is probably going to be totally different in a year from now. It's something we need to invent. We need to learn from it. So educate users, experiment. Don't tell users that you educate them with what you know, but you will need to learn from them, from their experiment, because they're going to learn things. They're going to see what prompts are working, what's not working, what's maybe sometimes you will have false informations and not fake, but you might rely on wrong documents. So they're going to learn from this experience and they're going to be able to share their experiments. So to collect their feedback to see where it's working well and try to investigate when it's not working well if it's not worth it to use some prompts or it's because the documents are not well organized. What is the reason behind the scenes? So there's a lot of experimentation that you will need to do to fine tune what is good in your environment. And every organization will have different experiences. There's probably going to be common experiences, common practice, best practice, but it's going to be different way to leverage Copilot depending on your, how your documents are stored, where they're stored, how they're shared, if it's structured or not. And a good example, if you still have a lot of documents on your file shares, it won't work. So you have to do a file share migration into the cloud so you can leverage it. And maybe that will show you that that's not valuable for some information that are still on the file share. You need to discover that and fine tune and educate again. It's a constant learning curve. So what do I think uh, users should focus on when they're learning? So you should learn on how to use Copilot features, the basics. Copilot is about prompts. It's about you can do different things. Uh, so it's good to have some education on what you can do in different environment, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Um, I think Microsoft in Copilot will bring some suggestions for prompts, so it will lead you with probably the most common prompts they think are have value, but you need to educate users on that. Also, educate them on use cases, so it's not just using Copilot in Word. It's you know what are you trying? Try educate them on uh, where they think they spend a lot of time. Like a good example is people who have more than 100 email per day, they probably need to rely on Copilot. People who have 10 email a day, they rely less on Copilot to sort all these email. So you need to educate them on trying to understand where Copilot applies in a use case. Also educate them on how to use different Copilot components in their workflow, in the daily workflow. Find those use cases with them and educate them on how to leverage Copilot for those use cases. Then build your best practices because some of those use cases will lead to best practices. Some will be common to everybody, and you can bring some ideas to other people. Educate them on data hygiene. I talk about it. Educate on permission management. Also, it's a good place to re-explain if you didn't do it, or explain if you didn't do it. How to manage permissions. The example I was giving on Teams Public, that's a good thing. Educate on fact checking. So now it's also things you need to educate on generative AI. Generative AI is not 100% right. It makes mistakes. If you look at intelligent recap in Teams, for example, Teams Premium, it summarizes what has been said in a meeting. It's doing a pretty good job, but it makes a lot of mistakes. But at least they're obvious, so you can fix them. So always check the result of Copilot. Check also if it brings some links with sources. Check if the sources are good. Do some fact checking. And you need to be smart to use Copilot. And educate also on responsibility so people understand that they shouldn't leverage Copilot to things that are not ethical. And also educate them on what is responsibility. Educate the art of the prompt. I think that's probably the the area where we need to learn collectively. The art of the prompt is not easy. Um, I've spent sometimes 1 hour to try to find the right prompt that gave me the right information. But when I invested this hour, then for the next prompt, I understood the philosophy or the patterns of Copilot, and so I was able to reuse those patterns in the next prompts. So the heart of the prompt is something you're going to fine tune along the way. There are some basics that people need to understand. Uh, how to prompt and how to iterate, and how to frame a prompt so it gives the best value. So that's definitely something you need to educate your users, and it will be beneficial for their personal life in using ChatGPT at home, for example. So, next thing, it's important to communicate to the users who are going to use Copilot. So, explain the purpose, why you're deploying Copilot. What is the purpose behind that? Because there's can be a lot of angst, uh, and you need to excite showing the benefits. But the angst can be, is it going to take my job? Is it really secure enough? You can see the legal department, they don't want that if somebody prompts something, they bring some documents that shouldn't be there, or some secret or some IP. So you need to educate and reassure on the privacy, security, and the empowerment. I think I don't remember, I read a study, I don't remember if it was 30 or 40%, depending on the generation, but some people are scared by uh, generative AI taking their job. And so you need to educate and show the people that it will help them to focus on something that is more valuable. It's not aimed to replace their job. There might be some situations, some some users that might be very disrupted, like a call center, for example. If you're writing a good bot and based on OpenAI, then in some situation it can reduce the number of employees there. There might be some situation where people are translating in documents. That might be a challenge for them. Um, but if you embrace the technology, then you realize that a translation gonna do a good job. But if you want to do an excellent job, you need to have somebody who's able to enhance what Copilot brings to you with their own knowledge. And those who are going to embrace generative AI will be more competitive than the others for sure. And as usual, in every communication, you need to give a timeline so people understand when it's coming to who, and so define the scope of this in your communication. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the responsible AI. That's some principle made by Microsoft in terms of accountability, transparency, fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, and inclusiveness. That's their engagement in terms of responsible AI. That's what they're committing to. So if you want to have details at the end of the deck, there's content, a link to the what is a responsible AI. But this can be important for some people to understand. All this AI is responsible. Security and compliance principles also, I named it like that, but it's mostly to reassure people how it works. So it respects the compliance and the security patterns that you have already in Microsoft 365. So it will respect, um, protection like GDPR. Uh, it respect all the compliance you'll put in place in Microsoft 365. If it's based on Microsoft 365, it will keep the same. The security will be respected. If a document is not allowed you to access, then you won't show in Copilot. It won't. Copilot won't learn from the data of Microsoft 365 uh, customers. It will stay in the boundary of their tenant. Um, the Microsoft, when they bring back with Copilot an answer, it might not be 100% accurate, and Microsoft recognized that, and so you cannot blame Microsoft not bringing the right information. So you cannot uh, fully rely on the Copilot information. You need to have this fact checking I was talking about, or review the content to see if it's accurate to your environment. Because if you just use Copilot without looking at the results, you might have some issues in some areas. There's also Microsoft recently published, I think, an article saying that if a party sues a commercial customer for copyright infringement for using Microsoft Copilots or the output they generate, Microsoft will defend the customer and pay the amount of the adverse judgment or settlements. There's some conditions for that, so that's why there's a link. That's a pretty strong statement saying, if you generate an image in PowerPoint, for example, you can, if somebody is suing you because you used the image coming from this PowerPoint, or if it's designer, that can be a bad thing because you could think that generative AI learned from an image that was, you know, or a painting from Van Gogh, so people could potentially attack you. And Microsoft, when they state that, it shows that they didn't learn from non-public information, I guess. So, what strategy to deploy Copilot? That's my last slide. So it's not planned. It's my recommendation. Uh, we're still working at Planet to figure out what are the best way. But think if you want to use Copilot, do a pilot. Do a pilot of Copilot. But first, you need to assess your technical environment and licensing requirements. That as I presented, there's some, if you're not in the right state, if you're only using a few Microsoft 365 product, that might not worth the case, or the trouble, or the cost. Um, but also when you know that you're in the right technical environment, or at least you know what you need to do to be in this environment. And then what I think what's very important is since it's pretty, $30 per user per month is it's not neutral. So you need to figure out. That's why I recommend a pilot. Figure out, in your population, your workforce, who are the most eligible people who will take benefit of Copilot. Even if we don't have a lot of experience about it, you can, and we help our customers to figure out, the people who are managing a lot of documents, people who are receiving a lot of email, having a lot of meetings. There's some criteria that we help our customers to define to figure out, who should we target if we do a pilot with 300 users, for example. You know, uh, how we segment this population, how do we decide who's going to be in the pilot, and also need this segmentation goes through a discussion with some users, surveys. There's ways also maybe from adoption score to figure out, how people are using the technology. There's ways to figure out, who you want to put in this pilot of Copilot. So experiment with those users when you decide who they are. So educate them and learn from their experience. So you need to have a constant dialogue with them. So you need to have regular meetings with them to figure out, what worked well, what didn't work well. Create a community so they can share their experience and learn from each other and adjust the learning, the training, and also eventually adjust your information architecture, how you organize your sites or your teams, how you define your governance if you have any, and build best practices. So based on your experience, you can build best practices on your vision. and on your experience, you can build best practices. And then expand where it makes sense. So that's my recommendation. Don't try to deploy Copilot to everyone without having this work before, because it has a cost, uh, and you might make a mistake if you deploy without doing this, because then you pay, let's say, $30 for 300 user, 100K per year. It might be not be something for a large company, it might not be important, but you might have a feedback from users saying it's not working, it's not worth it. And it's because you didn't try to segment what use cases were applying the best for them. It's because you didn't clean your data, you didn't look at your data hygiene, you didn't look at how your organization of documents is. So you might not have learned from this experience of deploying Copilot. Copilot experience will tell you a lot about your uh, AI maturity in terms of data and AI maturity in terms of usage. So to finish, I share a lot of resources. First, if you look at the roadmap, here's the roadmap as I saw it today. You can see that Copilot is going to come to SharePoint, to the classic Outlook, and Excel apparently will be a little bit late compared to the rest. But you see, it's coming everywhere. It's going to come to Viva Engage, and it's coming to um, all the Microsoft 365 tools. It's a matter of time. But it won't be the 1st of November 2023. You won't have everything ready. It won't be perfect. AI is evolving so fast, so quickly that it will change. And I shared a few links that can be helpful. Uh, Links about adoption. Those sites are provided by Microsoft. They're evolving, so take a look at it. There's training content. I was talking about data privacy and security. There's how to get started content, how to get ready. There's an article I made on Microsoft Copilot on LinkedIn. There's some the video I showed you made by Microsoft on Copilot. Probably when I have Copilot 365 on my YouTube channel, you'll find also videos. There's a video to explain how Microsoft 365 Copilot works. Very good video. There's also Microsoft Copilot how to get ready video, good video too. There's the announcement with all potential future too, and the roadmap. So it was a bit long. It's my first draft of how I will do a discovery of Copilot. Hope it was interesting for some of you. If you need the deck, just put a comment and obviously subscribe to my channel. Hope this was insightful.